What's going on, people? Georgio Savvides here, founder of the Hip Hop Orchestra, as well as the host of the Hip Hop Orchestra Presents podcast. And I got a really exciting announcement to finally make with everyone, is that we have our very first official sponsor for the podcast. Now, they are an amazing company called Odin's Vault, who are extremely dedicated in bringing you the very best in officially licensed merchandise from pop culture. And when I mean the very best, I mean the very best. They provide things like keyrings, caps, t-shirts, to Funko Pops, to statues from all over, such as DC, Marvel, Disney, The Mandalorian, Harry Potter, music artists from all over the place, and they are ridiculously good. I've got a couple of things to show you on offer at the moment. This trust me, their stuff is amazing. So, t-shirts, like I mentioned, like the one I'm wearing right now. It's got Rocky right here, which I absolutely love. Or, like I said, also got Funko Pops as well, 3.75 inches and 10 inches. I've got a couple of 10 inches right here for you. I've got Post Malone right here, and I've also got Biggie right here, who I absolutely love. These are so sick. Odin's Vault, trust me, they are amazing. Now, I'm going to leave the link below in the video right here, and also in the description below as well in all future videos from the podcast. But trust me, Odin's Vault are amazing. Website is www.odinsvault.co.uk. Get in touch with them now and start buying ASAP. But also, before I forget as well, I just want to say the biggest thank you to Odin's Vault for sponsoring the podcast. It means the absolute world to me. Thank you. And trust me, get in touch with them right now. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And peace. What's going on, people? Welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast. And today we're joined by an incredible guest today, RTS winning and Bafta nominated composer Vince Pope. How are you doing, sir? You okay?
Very good. Yeah, nice to be with you.
You too. How's things okay? You said how busy you were at the moment.
Yeah, I mean it's funny. I was very lucky last year. Actually, just got a job before the first lockdown, and I was sort of in two minds whether to take it or not, and I did. So that kept me going sort of pretty much most of last year. And then towards the end of the year, I sort of finally came to rest on that job. And then, as was always the way with me, I started kind of going, oh, after about a month or 6 weeks, I'm going, right, where's the next job coming from? And literally in the last week, sort of five have come along at once. So super busy. A couple of them I'm having to pitch on. Some of them they know me already, so it's fine, you know. But yeah, it's got crazy busy.
That's brilliant. Is this stuff you're allowed to talk about, or is it top secret for the time being?
Probably a combination, actually.
Okay.
And I'm never sure whether the producers on a job want me to talk about being attached to it or not before I'm contractually agreed to it. I mean, one of them is a job that I did the first series of, which is a comedy for Channel 4 called This Way Up. So that's kind of like a recommission, if you like. I did the first series, I don't know, 18 months ago, and they've come back. One is a team I've worked with before. I worked with them on No Offense, which was a Paul Abbott show. Paul Abbott, who wrote Shameless and various other shows. But yeah, I won't say what the show is. But yes, they're working on a new one, so that's another one. The Avant-Garde Dance Theatre have asked me to work with them. They're doing some amazing work. They've done some amazing dance productions. So that's a little bit different for me because it's theatre, and I haven't done music for theatre before, so that'll be interesting.
Oh, really?
I mean, a lot of work because it's like an hour and a half show. So whereas even a film that's an hour and a half long, the amount of music you get might be maybe 25 minutes, sort of, if you stack it all together. Obviously, this is going to be sort of 3 times the volume, if you like, of music. So it's going to be, quite.
Of course. Do you like taking on jobs that you're not too familiar with, or do you try to aim towards ones that you know that you're really good at and know really well?
I mean, this particular thing is I really like the challenge. So the music that they kind of want is quite experimental, quite avant-garde. Sort of Aphex Twin was one of their references. So I'm quite excited about that. Now, I'm luckily in the position where I can sort of say, actually, if it's punk rock, maybe get someone else to do it.
Yeah.
You know? So, so this was quite nice. And although actually it's going to be hard work and probably not as well paid as some other jobs that I do, I quite like the creative drive that they have. So I think it depends. In answer to your question, I would definitely see what it was, and I'm quite happy to work outside my comfort zone if it's an area that I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm. That's brilliant. Do you tend to work? Do you tend to kind of collaborate a lot as well? Do you like to work by yourself on a project?
Well,
when it depends on what you're working on.
Yeah, no, sure. When I started, I kind of, in a sense, I got into this industry kind of composing wise, not by default, but I was in a band, and it was a sort of acrimonious split many years ago, and I kind of like promised myself I wouldn't make my career reliant on other people. I was so sort of burnt by that experience. So then I became very insular, just sort of very studio based. Now I like to do as many collaborations as possible because I sort of, that's what music is about, and other people's inspiration. I play the piano, that's my main sort of instrument, and of course I can't play anything else. So if I want to get the best rendition of something I've written, it's going to be asking players to come and realize that music for me. So collaboration is good,
definitely. I know that you play piano. Is that when you approach a project, say Misfits or Black Mirror or whatever it might be, is that how you compose? Do you tend to go to piano first and build around that, or do you kind of approach every project differently depending on what you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, I think being a pianist is a lucky blessing in the sense that, because obviously the way to input data, the easiest way to input data in a sense on a computer is you can play it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously guitarists, there's never been quite that MIDI to USB to, you know what I mean? If you're a guitarist and you want to play the lines in it, you're probably going to do it on a keyboard, really. So crikey, I forgot what the question was. As a piano player, God, what was the question? Sorry.
So as a pianist, do you kind of focus on piano first and build around there?
Me rambling. Well, so in terms, depending on, it does depend on the job. So some things, I'm trying to think of an example. So No Offense, this series, which was quite a sort of dark comedy, that was a sort of, it's quite a folksy sound, quite an unusual sound. Used a lot of guitars and banjos and stuff like that. So with something like that, I kind of tend to focus on the sound. So I'll get a lot of, like, where you can't see. I'm going to turn you around very, very quickly.
No worries. I love that.
So my wall of instruments. So I'll tend to sort of, okay, this sound works. Then I might buy an instrument because I bought this Colombian. It's a bit like a ukulele, but it's got 12 strings. So I'm quite sound driven, for particular things. If it's an orchestral score, then it's all samples and I'm sitting at the keyboard sort of, okay, it's about chord progressions maybe. Sometimes it's about, themes. It varies, I would say. Yeah. I'm not the kind of composer, I would say what I'm not. I'm probably not the kind of composer who sits down and just like sits at the piano, works out a theme and says, okay, everything is going to be based on this. I quite like sound and texture to inspire the music, I suppose. Yeah.
What kind of programs do you think like Spitfire, Hollywood Strings to other bits, and Omnisphere as well, or do you try to use different programs as you go along?
Yeah, I mean, so that's always a challenge, to get the latest sounds I definitely have some go-to plugins in terms of sounds that I use. Certainly the ones you mentioned, Spitfire Audio. I mean, they do some great stuff in the sort of the stuff I use from them tends to be a bit more ambient, you know, a bit more kind of, I say ambient, but they've got some great string libraries, but they're a bit more subtle than the kind of, I guess, the Hollywood strings. Omnisphere is, you know, it's so easy. You're just going to get, you know, pull up and down, press a button, and you've almost got the thing written before you start. But that I have, you know, I do tend to try and veer away from being too heavily reliant on things like that, because at the end of the day, you know, I don't want my stuff to sound like everything else that's out there. So it's important. I mean, a while ago I got, what I think it's called, what's it called? RMX, is it? There's a particular, I can't, it's a while since I've actually, I pulled it up on the sequencer actually, but it was a sound generator that you would have heard on loads of stuff. And in the end, I'd be watching TV and I could hear, you know, something I pressed a note on 2 weeks ago, like, oh god. So to be honest with you, you know, I stopped using it because, you know, I don't want to be recognizing a patch, you know, on a TV program. It seems, yeah.
I could ask that exact same question actually. If you recognise other people's music and sounds that they've used, because there's been times where I've used Omnisphere and there's been a sound that I've played and it ended up being from Junkie XL and the Mad Max soundtrack, thinking, oh, that's the sound that I used. It was the exact same sound without no tweaks, no nothing. I thought that's where it came from. I mean, have that happened to you by accident? Just play the sound from something. I think, oh, that was from that soundtrack or that composer or that program.
Good question. Yeah, it used to happen more. I mean, certainly 10 years ago, that was happening all the time. Now, I suppose maybe because there are so many more, you know, plugins out there, and maybe people have also got wise to the fact that, you know, it's a lazy composer who just literally takes a patch out of the box and goes, okay, that's good enough for me. You know, why would it be good enough in a sense? Because actually, you know, if it's going to bed in with exactly what you've got, then you can always tweak it, change it slightly. And that, you know, it might be something as simple as just taking the attack down, but you know, there's always a tweak I find that I want. Yeah.
Ah, okay. And you said you started off by playing piano. Is that was that your introduction into music when you were younger?
Yeah. So I was taught classical piano. My dad was a musician himself. He was a kind of a jazz pianist, and so he kind of wanted me to have all the kind of grounding in classical repertoire, and actually more than anything, technique. So I think, you know, the classical piano is a very good place to learn the technique of the instrument. So yeah, so I got to quite a decent level actually, even though I can say so myself. But I always liked composing. You know, it was more interesting to me, rather than, you know, regurgitate the grade 7 syllabus, the grade 8 syllabus, you know, and then actually diploma after that. You know, it was more interesting to sit down and kind of, okay, I like the sound of that. Why do I like it? Let's you know, kind of transcribe it and then figure out what they were doing and then figure out what I'd like to do. You know, I had that kind of brain, I suppose.
And I saw that did you do maths at university as well?
I did.
You
yes.
did.
So my dad, having kind of, you know, planted this seed of being a musician, composer, whatever. He then said, you know, actually, you've got to go to university and do a proper degree.
Okay.
And I was pretty good at maths, so I thought, okay, you know, I was almost going to go and study music at university, but part of me sort of rebelled against. I mean, you know, having done music A level, and I'm learning about Mozart's Symphony 40, I think was one of the set works, and you know, it's just like, actually not that interested in, you know, what Beethoven was doing. You know, I'd be more interested in going and hanging out at the Guildhall and learning jazz. You know, so I thought, so it wasn't too hard. I decided to do a maths degree in the end, but I spent a lot of time hanging out with friends. I had friends at the Guildhall, all doing music over there, so I just hung around there. I'd leave my maths lectures
Yeah.
Go straight down and hang out at the Guildhall bar, and then get in jam sessions down there. So
Oh, I can imagine. That's brilliant. I mean, do you feel like
yeah.
that was a great lesson for you, just hanging out with the people around the Guildhall, just learning and seeing what it was all about?
I mean, I often think about this. In some ways, I regret some of the rigor that I missed, having not done a degree in music, because obviously there are technical aspects of composition um, that you learn, and that of course I missed out on. I think if the drive is significant, you can learn those things away from university. And I have quite a focused mind. I want to learn something, and I'm pretty good at learning it. So I was always, when I thought about that, do I regret, or was it great hanging out at the Guildhall, having done the degree in maths feels a little bit like time wasted, because although I got my degree, as soon as I left, I closed the maths textbooks and never looked back. So music is what I want to do. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't change it. I mean, also the other good thing about going to the Guildhall, but I suppose I had this to a certain degree, was that you get to meet so many more musicians, people doing the same thing that you're doing. And although I had a group of friends, it's not the same as playing in their orchestras and doing all the things that you do if you're an undergraduate at a music college. So it swings and roundabouts. Yeah. Now I wouldn't change anything, because I'm in a very lucky position now and it's worked out for me. But who knows how things might have turned out.
Well, you've done some obviously incredible things, so it's worked out amazingly for you. So massive congratulations for you. Honestly, your work is obviously incredible as well.
Thank you.
Really, I'm a big fan of your stuff, and just to talk to you is amazing. So thank you. But how you said your dad was a musician too. I mean, did he help you along the way as well about advice and techniques and so forth as well, and what to look out for?
Well, the easy answer to that question is no.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he played in nightclubs when actually, so in the 60s and 70s and the 80s, the live music was, you would have a residency in a club or in a restaurant. That kind of thing died out actually. But so he was a particular type of musician, and I mean, the first computer that I got, I think I nicked my mum's Amstrad. You're probably too young to remember this, but the Amstrad computer is a monochrome screen.
I remember those, yeah.
Who watch this podcast, who know that. And I used a software called Voetra, and you literally had to sort of, it was the most basic, I say, monochrome, two color screen. And so my dad, I think he looked at me and like, what has that got to do with music? And I think, so in his head, it was like, actually go and do a proper degree. Because if you're going to ask about with computers all day long and think that that's where music, that's what music is about, it's no. But of course, I mean, he was very good. I learned a lot from him in terms of jazz harmony, improvisation. I mean, his area of expertise was jazz. So literally, I had the best teacher. And actually, it's interesting because some classically trained and only classically trained musicians, composers, they can be a bit out of their depth when you're talking about jazz and sharp 11 and it's a whole different world that they don't really necessarily understand. So I feel like I had a bit of a grounding in both. But certainly, yeah, when I started embracing electronics, it was kind of like, okay, I don't know what you're doing now.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, no, so it's not totally no.
Okay.
But there was definitely a point at which he wasn't coming along any further. Yeah, and I think because also a lot of my first work was in advertising, and I think also the idea of a 30-second piece of music or a 60-second piece of music was like, what is he doing? He'll never make a living from that. Yeah.
I could get to that a bit later, but I'll bring it in now actually, because I know that was the brand campaigns you've worked on, things like Nike, BMW, Honda, Walkers, these incredible brand campaigns. I mean, you said about the adverts might not work, but obviously they did for you. I mean, what was it like for you to actually work on such major brand campaigns like that?
I mean, it was great, absolutely fantastic. And I mean, some of the, it was, I mean, advertising changed, and that's partially why I moved away from it. But in the sort of early 90s, mid 90s, it was a hell of a lot of fun, and big sessions. Everybody had budgets to do orchestras, so it was an awful lot of fun. And I mean, so in fact, funny, I got a message actually last night from a guy who wanted a copy of my Nintendo GameCube music.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he sent me the YouTube, the YouTube click, and it's a Nintendo, and the music, and I've completely forgotten. Virgin Records, on the strength of that advertisement, got in touch with me, and they released a 12-inch single of the music, so there was that crossover going on as well, which was so it was exciting. Yeah, I can't say it wasn't. It was fun times, really. Yeah. Really.
That's amazing. I mean, just to get these placements, I mean, how does that work initially? Do you have to have like a manager or an agent to get these positions, or do you have to put like a body of work together, like a show reel, and then approach them yourself? How does it all work?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like, looking back on it, it feels like I was quite lucky. Basically, my girlfriend had a job at a company called the Tape Gallery, and so they were a sound studio in Soho, and she was working on reception there. And around about the time when I split up with the band, so I'd been in this band, and we got a deal with EMI. We were on the same label as Jesus Jones and Blur, and everything was going in the right direction. But then the band just fell out. I mean, it was a bit sort of, Spinal Tap. We just ended up hating each other. Anyway, so my girlfriend was working in this sound studio, and all the advertising agencies would come in and record their voiceovers there. So I said to her, well, I can do music for these ads as well. Why don't you see if the boss is interested in hearing some of my music? And he was, and he'd been a guy, he liked his music, and funny enough, he used to run a company doing exactly that, doing music for commercials. So he said to my girlfriend, he said, why don't you take over the running of the company again? It was dormant at this point. No one was doing anything. And he said, well, actually, I've changed directions. I've now got this voiceover studio, but if you want to take over the running of the music gallery, was what it was called, go for it. So that's kind of how it began. And we worked together for sort of 2 or 3 years. I kept on saying to him, I want to be more than a jobbing composer for you, because he was taking, a significant percentage of the commission fee. I said, I want to be part of this company. And he kept on saying, yeah, no. And in the end, I kind of thought, okay, he's never going to make me a partner in this company, or give me something more than just being an employee, if you like. So I set up my own company, which was Beetroot,
yeah.
And that's how it sort of happened. So by the time I set up Beetroot Music, I already had people who knew me and knew my work and knew it was pretty good. And so, it was great, having had that sort of 3 years working for another company. The guy was very pissed off when I left. I mean, he was sort of pulling his hair out and very upset. But I said, I asked you time and time again to be more than just, make me more of an equal partner in the business. Because basically he wasn't doing anything other than just sort of taking half the money, or actually even more than half the money.
Wow.
And my girlfriend was doing all the work in terms of getting the jobs in. I was doing the composing, and he was just like, oh, that's nice, so I didn't feel too bad, I mean, and after a period of time we became friends again, but it was good fortune. I do owe a lot to the fact that I was given the opportunity, through luck, obviously, to get a start. So yeah, and then Beetroot took off, really.
That's fantastic. I know that I want to ask, actually, when after that first, advert or two that you worked on, did the offers come through more frequently after that? Do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about the position of the position of the studio, in terms of the very first job working for Lloyd was his name, was that because they did voiceovers for commercials and the sound effects, there was a constant stream of people coming in. It was a very successful studio doing that job. So there was a constant stream of people coming in, and of course, most adverts needed music. Sometimes they would already have music done, and it was no problem. But obviously, 30% or 40% of the time, the people coming in and go, "Oh, you do music as well? Great." So, yeah, there was repeat work. I hope there weren't too many people who were so disgruntled with what I did that they never came back. But of course, if they don't come back, you never know, do you? So,
Of course.
yeah.
But how kind of difficult was it to say compose such a short piece of music for the advert? Was it really difficult to do that?
I mean, yes and no. Sometimes it was very difficult. There's something to be. I mean, there's something to be said for you have to be very quick at hooking people in.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of easy to write, a genre piece which is just in the style of, but ultimately, even in a 30-second commercial, when it's good, when the music is good and it plays a large part, the hook maybe 4 seconds, then you've got a bit of space, the story of the advert, and then the hook comes back 4 seconds at the end. So it's quite demanding, but at the same time, I learned something which has stayed with me, and that ability to kind of write, well, hopefully relatively catchy hooks or things that grab people's attention, whether it's a sound, it has to be some sort of hook, even if it's a sound that you've never heard before, or there's something. So it became more difficult, funny enough, when I moved away from commercials and then had to write like a 2-minute cue. I'm like, oh my god, it only it's only like I've only got 30 seconds. How am I going to spit it out in 2 minutes? But yeah, it's certainly an art. Yeah, 30 seconds is tricky.
Definitely. I mean, have there been times where you've previously made a piece of music and you get an offer for an advert, think, you know what, that would actually fit nicely into that advert? Has that ever happened?
Well, I mean, the more pitches that I did that didn't get used, because obviously, I mean, so if a really nice job came in, I might do 5 different versions, for them. So even if they choose one, there's 4 that are going. Well,
something else, yeah.
Yeah, they never went in the bin, but they go, in the drawer for the next commercial that comes in. They go, oh, have you got something like this? Go, yeah, I've got. So yes, no, there was a lot of stuff that was reused. I mean, I say reused that I would take out and say, here, yes, I've got something that I think works.
Nice. Yeah. Have there been times as well? You said with me like 4 or 5 ideas for each sort of thing and pitch that. Have there been times where the people you're working with, they've picked your least favorite one of those ideas, thinking, please don't pick that one. I like this one the best. Has that kind of ever happened? Yeah.
Loads of times.
Yeah.
Loads of times. And not only that, but sometimes, I can do a piece of music which I think is like, this is someone blessed me in this moment. This is it, man. They're gonna love it. I love it. And I play it to them, and well, nowadays you never sit in the same room as them, but obviously back in the day it would be like, you play it to them, so, and you're thinking, okay, this is a done deal. The ink is going to be wet on the check in 5 minutes, and they sort of turn around and go, oh, I don't really like that.
Really? I mean, how did that make you feel?
Well, your first few years, heartbreaking. Yeah, because I'm a creative person, and I do put my life and soul into whatever I do. I don't think I've ever really done a job where I kind of don't care if I get it or not. So I care, I care. And I have to say, working in advertising, it can be quite soul destroying if you haven't got a thick skin, because actually, there's no, I mean, it's changed significantly. It used to be that you would kind of meet the director and the creatives, and there'd be a creative discussion. But it got to the point where they just send you an email, and they're sending it to 3 other composers, and or maybe even more. and there's no discussion. So it literally feels sometimes, or used to feel, as I say, I do less commercials now, but it used to feel like almost throwing pins at a dartboard. You know, how are they going to decide? You know, there's no comeback, there's no feedback. So yeah, with the change to doing TV drama, that all changed. You know, you only really start writing at the point at which you've got the job. So they talk to you, you know, and it's completely, you know, it's much more rewarding. But I do remember that transition because it was spooky. The first big job that I got, which it was the other way around. So I got the job, and of course I hadn't really written much music for them at this point. And then it's like, oh my God, I got the job. Now I've got to go and write stuff. What if they don't like it? But that's a better problem to have than, you know, okay, write us some music and we'll tell you if we like it. You know what I mean? It's a better position to be in. And I think, I think it's definitely, I don't think I'd want to be just playing that advertising game now, because it's too hit and miss.
Really?
And there isn't that, well, there isn't that dialogue really between the people who are commissioning you and what you're doing, you know.
Is it usually quick fire with what they want from you? So like anything by next week, like get over to us quickly?
Yeah. Advertising is, I mean, funny enough, I got a job the other day, and it's always, you know, can we have it yesterday? You know, or, you know, 24 hours. I mean, I used to share a studio with a guy called Martin Phipps, and we're, you know, very good friends. And he was doing drama at the time, and he would swan around, you know. I mean, lovely guy, you know. I hope he won't mind me saying so. You know, eating croissants and coffee, and I'm like in there, you know, okay, I've done it. You know? and you know, 2 weeks later, he'd still be working on his cue. No, sorry, no offense, Martin. It's very quick fire. Advertising is, and invariably, you know, I'd send down a track, wouldn't hear anything for 10 days. And then when they finally deign to listen to it and get back to me, it'll be like, oh yeah, can we have all these changes by, you know, tomorrow noon? It's like, well, why do you not, you know, you've had all this time to listen to it, and then in those 10 days, I can do the changes rather than, anyway. So yeah, don't get me started. I'm a grumpy old man now if I start.
I'll be quiet then.
No, it's me.
No, that's fine. But you mentioned about those transitions going from, say, 30 seconds to then 2 minutes into TV dramas and so forth. I mean, in the early days of doing that, how do you find that? It must have been really difficult to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a challenge, and you know, the idea of also having a hook or something that's important was a really useful ability to have. I mean, what I found doing TV drama, a lot of the stuff actually, is that really a long cue, I would say, is maybe 2 minutes, and then a super long cue is 4 minutes, which is kind of crazy, really, because obviously most composers, when you think about it, 4 minutes is not a long piece of music. But the art of writing music, which is soundtrack, is both to be, you know, a brilliant soundtrack, maybe something like American Beauty, Thomas Newman, that, you know, when people heard it for the first time, they go, wow. But that at the same time, within the movie, doesn't overpower it. At no point do you go, just turn that music down. It's too, you know, it's too intrusive. It's more of a skill than it sounds, you know. So you want something, you know, the best soundtrack adds something. It adds a tone, it adds a sense of aesthetic, but at the same time, you don't want to notice it too much. So it's like, you know, it's a contradiction in terms almost. You want to notice it, but you don't want to notice it. And of course, and that's more so when it's underneath dialogue, you know, and you've got to listen to what they're saying. So it's an interesting skill.
Definitely. I know that American Beauty gets mentioned a lot actually for how good it is. It's such a simple soundtrack, but yet it's so effective. I mean, is someone like Thomas Newman inspirational for you for what you do as well, and him like John Williams as well, Hans Zimmer, those kinds? Are they very inspirational for you in terms of how you approach different projects?
Yeah, I mean, they're all amazing. composers. I mean, I think the reason why maybe that American Beauty one gets mentioned a lot is because I think I do remember when I first heard it, thinking, "Wow, I haven't really heard anything quite like that in a movie before." And of course now, you know, I mean, that movie is, I don't know, 20 years old or whatever it is. So it's kind of become part of the soundscape. So now it's not so new to people. If you heard that now, you probably go, "Oh, no, it didn't sound that," you know. But at the time, it was quite a big deal. It was a very big deal. Yeah, a lot of advertising people would come in and say, "Oh, can we have something like that?" You know, because it was fresh and it was different and it was new. You know, John Williams is seems to be an altogether different sort of composer, because his stuff is so melodically and harmonically based. You know, and you know, his melodies are so grabbing, they so hook you in, and they tell the story of the film, you know, which is amazing. You know, that's the thing. You know, so Jaws, you know, I mean, everybody knows the story of Jaws, I'm sure, by now, so it's not new, but of course it was amazing. You know,
Of course it was.
It's an amazing score. Yeah. So he's but Thomas, the interesting thing about Thomas Newman in comparison, I suppose the different thing is that, I mean, in a similar way you might know in a similar but different way you might know a John Williams score. So Thomas Newman has a sound.
He does.
To me, which you can kind of see in Road to Perdition, or you can hear in, you know, his various other movies. John Williams has a sound, but of course, but his sound is the orchestral palette and his ability to build a melody. So it's kind of a different use of orchestration, it seems to me, or scoring a movie. And Hans Zimmer's probably a bit of both, I suppose, to a certain degree. I mean, he's clearly coming to his own with, you know, the big, I want to say, comic movies. I mean, you know, the superhero movies. He seems to be, you know, known for now. I've heard it argued, of course, that Hans Zimmer, you could put any one of his scores in any one of his movies, and I'm not sure whether that's doing him a disservice. I really like his Inception soundtrack. I think
same, love it.
Yeah, they're all very different, all very talented people, aren't they? I mean, yeah, crazily talented. Yes, if I could have a tenth of what, you know, they have to offer, then
but you're incredible as well yourself. I mean, I listen to your music; it's incredible. I mean, in like your recent EP, actually, 3 days until tomorrow, which released recently. I mean, what was that like to finally release that?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's great. It's taken me a while, a long while, to get back to doing music which I am not being paid by anybody else to do, you know. So for a long time I had when I was working on something, I would have, you know, I really want to compose that, or I really want to do that. And then of course, as soon as I stopped working, I was too tired to get back in the studio and do it just for me. I was like, okay, I need a rest now. I'm going to go, you know, hiking or something. So to be fair, it took me about 9 years of sort of stashing away ideas, thoughts, and the first that first came to fruition. The first album was Messages. So Messages I released, I think it was 2019, and that was kind of like so that is much more eclectic in some sense. There's some gospel choirs on there. There's some spoken word. It's classical influences. It's much more kind of diverse. But it was I think because I collected a lot of these ideas along the way and thought, actually, okay, I just want to put these out finally. And once I got that first record out, it's felt like, okay, I'm on my way. So I definitely want to keep you know, I guess I see myself moving in the direction of artist a little bit more, you know, composing artist rather than just, you know, soundtrack composer. So yeah, I mean, and 3 days on 3 days until tomorrow has been the latest incarnation of that. You know, comes from the, you know, written in lockdown, and when time just seemed to be kind of like every day seemed like yesterday or tomorrow. And so I was rooting around for a title. I knew the EP was going to be 3 tracks, and then some, you know, I just thought, oh, and I like to. I spend a long time mulling things over, album covers and words. So I was playing with words 3 days, you know, and I kind of like this idea of a sentence that doesn't quite make sense. You know, it's not, because obviously, how can 3 days until, what does that even mean? But sometimes things just sound right. You know what I mean? You can have something that actually makes no sense, but somehow just rolls off the tongue. So I liked it, and yeah, hence the title. You didn't ask me about the title.
No, I was about to, though. So you answered it for me. You got it first.
You asked me about the music, which is fine. Yeah, yeah. And so, but then yeah, the music is I guess how I've been feeling in lockdown. Actually, quite relaxed. You know, I've got my family around me. They're probably sick of the sight of me, but I quite like the sight of them. So yeah, and quite meditative, hopefully, quite peaceful.
I was going to ask actually how you have been these past years. So have you all been okay these past year or so?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely regarded myself as lucky, fortunate. Yeah, it's been okay. You know, I have a studio in my house anyway, so my work environment hasn't changed massively. I mean, the only difference is now with the family sort of working from home or doing Zoom tuition downstairs is that, you know, I go and open the fridge and there's less food in it than when I'm here on my own, which is that's the only, you know, it's like, you know, okay, who's eating the bloody but no, I've been lucky, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. But going back to the kind of the shows that you've done, the dramas and so forth, you've done, like we mentioned earlier, you've done some amazing on the Black Mirror, Unstead, Tigers Are Not Afraid, Misfits as well, obviously. Do you have any personal favourite ones that you've worked on?
Yeah, good question. Well, yeah, that's a really good question. I'm trying to think whether that should be the ones that have become most successful. I mean, Misfits did so much for me because obviously, you know, it won Bafta for Best Drama. You know, I got a nod for the music. So that has a special place, and also because it was a major. I mean, it was 5 seasons, so it was, you know, 5 years effectively, or maybe that's part of 6 years. So that has a special place, definitely, for me. Whether the music does, you know, that. Yeah, that's probably. It was very eclectic. So I mean, there's 2 albums that I did, soundtrack albums based from the music, and it's probably, if you delved into it at all, you know, it's orchestral stuff. There's some rap. There's, you know, some, you know, it's all over the place. So yeah, some of the music on that, it was a joy to write. You know, then you know, the Black Mirror was a much more homogenous sound. You know, so I loved working on that. The director, Aaron Harris, you know, great guy. And we worked on Misfits, was the first thing we worked on, and I really enjoyed that because creating sort of something slightly different sounding, and that really complemented the piece, and that has that kind of, I want to say singularity of purpose, but has that kind of, that's a really nice feeling. You know, you kind of come away and it's like, okay, this is the album, this is the sound, you know, so that was great. Tigers Are Not Afraid, you know, she was amazing. I met her for the first time like about a year after I'd finished doing the score. So
really?
So it was a bit of a weird one actually, because I was super busy, and I got this call by my agent from this Mexican director, and to be honest, you know, I'll get a fair amount of people who are, you know, who want something very cheaply. They haven't got a budget. You know, I'm sure, you know, as a musician yourself, you know, you're aware of those sort of calls where you go, I'd love to do it, but when you say you've got no money, do you mean you've got zilch? Or do you mean you've got like a bit? Anyway, so the sort of first point of contact, you know, her agent to my agent, you know, and the sort of the no money thing, and it was like a Mexican filmmaker. I was thinking, okay, you know, I'm super busy. I'd love to do this, but maybe this isn't going to happen. But that no money wasn't no money. It was a decent budget, you know, and she was great. You know, she was super to work with, really nice person, and the film is great. I don't know whether you've seen it, but it's an amazing,
fantastic. I've seen it, yeah.
Amazing film. She's going on to bigger and better things. I think Guillermo, get that right. Guillermo del
Toro, yeah. Always a hard name to say.
Yeah, of Pan's Labyrinth fame, you know, has commissioned her to write a movie, and they're working together. You know, if you're listening to this, Issa, I'd love to work on your next book. Yeah, so that, you know, that also has a place in my heart. I mean, I think the ones I've released, I would say probably that kind of speaks for itself to a certain degree. You know, yeah. If I don't tend to be that bothered about putting stuff out if I haven't been pleased with the results. So yeah.
But they're all fantastic soundtracks, all of them fantastic, and they're all right, so amazing. And you mentioned Bafta a minute ago as well, and obviously you've been nominated for a Bafta as well, plus you won RTS and other very prestigious awards. I mean, when it's come around from being nominated for such prestigious things and winning some as well, I mean, what's it feeling like behind that?
What does it feel like?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. You know, when the Bafta nod was like, I was kind of so early in my career for doing TV as well. You know, Misfits was my second job really in TV. So to be, you know, to get a nod for the Bafta was not only unexpected, it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I was super upset when I didn't win, I have to say. I went to the awards ceremony. I don't know why, stupidly. I thought just nominating that. You know. But actually, no, that's not true. I didn't think that I was going to win. I just didn't think I was going to lose. It was really, and I remember going to the thing being so excited, and when they didn't, and when, you know, I can't remember who won actually. That's really embarrassing. Anyway, I didn't win, obviously, and I was like, oh, I'm going home. I'm going home. I had nothing. So it is great. But the thing is, I guess the lesson that taught me was, you know, it's you know, not to focus on the goal. You know, if you get nominated and you win something, great, absolutely fantastic. But if not, you know, it's not the end of the world. Yeah, it's the icing on the cake. I mean, it sounds glib, maybe, and a little bit presumptuous to say, but obviously, if you enjoy what you're doing, then, you know, awards are great, but they are the icing on what otherwise is a great tasting cake. You know.
But that message right there is the icing on the cake for this podcast. What a fantastic way to end the podcast. But I just want to say, Vince, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast. It's been so good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you so much. And how can people find you, by the way, online as well, just in case?
Vince Pope, composer. That Google search will bring me up. You know, if you're enjoying the music, then you know, my stuff is all on Spotify and the various other digital platforms. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Vince. Thank you. And take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Georgie.
Okay.